That was Days of Jupiter with Shallow Side off of their new disc, Panoptical. Before that, Stephen Pearcy, the voice of Rat, which he still lives on because that song is called I'm a Rat, and it's off of his disc View to a Thrill. That's new. Red Dragon Cartel with Havana off of their CD Patina. That is a project of Jake E. Lee, who a lot of you may recall played guitar for Ozzy on the Bark at the Moon and Ultimate Sin albums, and maybe even another one after that. Pure Fire started that set with their cover of Kiss's Love Gun. Pure Fire is a kind of all-star Kiss tribute band. And there's 10 tracks on the disc. They're really crisp and with good harmonies. I've liked the songs that I've listened to so far off of that. And so, it's a little less than half an hour remaining here in the Mostly Metal and Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program block of time. And it is time now to switch over to the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program.
Your insubordination will not be tolerated.
Ken the Metal Professor. This is the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program for this period in early November 2018. I'm going to do this in 3 parts. Part 1 is telling you about a show I saw this past weekend. Part 2 is telling you what shows in the area are coming up. And then Part 3 is maybe taking a quick look at the national wrestling scene just for those folks that may not be immersed in it. So on Saturday, November 3rd, Black Label Pro had a show called Big Trouble in Little Crown Point at the On the Square Sports Academy. Black Label Pro is a regional wrestling federation, which is it's more part of the Chicago indie wrestling scene, even though it takes place right over the border in Indiana, than it is sort of the Northwest and North Central Indiana wrestling scene. There's not a whole lot of crossover in personnel, so this is more of the Chicago area folks that come out to this one. It's good stuff. So there were 10 matches on this card. The first one was the Warhorse Jake Parnell defeating Darby Allin in kind of a really hot fire opening Daredevil kind of match with these guys jumping over the ropes and throwing each other into chairs and hitting each other with things. It's pretty exciting, good stuff. Second match was women's wrestling. Alley Cat defeated Kylie Ray with a pile driver, of all things. It started out with the ladies both having good sportsmanship, but then, as it always does in wrestling, that breaks down and it gets pretty intense after that. But Alley Cat came out the winner. PCO, Pierre Carl Oulet, defeated Dasher Hatfield. PCO is a brick house of a gentleman. He's large and stocky, just solidly built with a huge barrel of a chest. And it's amazing some of the moves he can pull off for somebody built like he is. He's a lot of fun to watch. The fourth match was Kevin Koo defeating Gary J. This was a brutal match. These guys beat the heck out of each other. For whatever reason, Kevin Koo has a vendetta against the little stepladder that ring announcer Sarah uses to get in the ring. And so whenever Kevin comes to the ring, Sarah's used her step stool to get up, into the ring. There's usually entrance steps, but she carries out a little step stool. And he just obliterates it and throws it aside and tries to destroy it. And I don't know why, but this step ladder got involved in the match, and it helped lead to Kevin Koo winning. Man, these guys just chopped and slapped and punched and hit each other over and over and over again. And then we had a melee of 8 people, 4 tag teams altogether. No new friends. The pair ended up the winners. They defeated the Space Pirates, the Rigel Twins, and 5-Foot Pack Hunters. And this one was a lot of chaos and jumping over ropes and onto people on the floor and things like that. After intermission, Brian Alvarez of Wrestling Observer newsletter and podcast fame defeated Marco Stunt, who is a smaller gentleman, not Hornswoggle small, although he had a match against Hornswoggle at the last BLP card in Crown Point. But he is a tremendous amount of fun to watch, and Brian Alvarez was a terrific, arrogant SOB who ended up defeating Marco Stunt, even though Marco put up a good fight. Then we had some Lucha Libre. Puma King defeated Gringo Loco. Puma King is dressed as a cat with a complete black leather suit with long pants, long sleeves, and a mask. And his entrance music is You Give Love a Bad Name by Bon Jovi, which is an interesting match. Jeremy Wyatt defeated Marcus Crane. Jeremy Wyatt is the heel, but he uses Rodney James Dio's Rainbow in the Dark as his entrance music, so he's always going to be my favorite. And then we had 2 championship matches. The first was Kobe Durst. He successfully retained his Black Label Pro Indiana State Championship against Rory Gulak. And then in the main event, we had a Falls Count Anywhere match between Ethan Page and Jordan Grace. Jordan Grace held the Black Label Pro World Championship. I don't know if they call it the World Championship. It's just the Black Label Pro Championship, I think. But this was a Falls Count Anywhere match, so the match started in the ring, but it eventually went out of the ring. It went out outside and around the arena twice, into the chairs, into the bleachers. There were tables, there were wooden planks, there were chairs. It was a violent event, and Ethan Page ended up winning and taking the title away from Jordan Page. So Jordan Grace. So Ethan Page is now your Black Label Pro champion. The next Black Label Pro event is going to be February 2nd. It's called Unplugged, and it's going to be at a smaller venue called RDS Gym in Crown Point. And apparently there's only going to be 200 tickets available, and that's it. So it sounds like something a little bit different. And then they're actually going to go to WrestleMania weekend and be part of an event in New Jersey. When WrestleMania happens, the big WrestleMania show takes place on Sunday night, and many independent federations bring their show on the road and set up shop in venues but around the area where WrestleMania is going to take place. So it's like a big wrestling convention with all these federations putting on shows. And so Black Label Pro will be one of them. And I wish them luck and hope they get some good notice while they're doing that. So that's a long time to wait, February 2nd, for the Black Label Pro show. But here's what you can see coming up soon in our area. This weekend, Saturday, November 10th. Now, if you're listening to the replay of this, you'll be listening to the replay on Sunday the 11th, so this won't do you any good. But Saturday, November 10th is one of those weekends where you are going to have to pick, because there's 3 different shows all at roughly the same time. So at 6 o'clock in South Bend, Indiana, the Federation EHF will be putting on a card called Uncivil War. Functified Wrestling Federation, FWF, will be putting on an event called Aftershock in Warsaw, Indiana, also on Saturday, November 10th at 7:30 Eastern. Also, Saturday, November 10th, down in Crawfordsville, New Generation Wrestling will be putting on a show called Invictus, which sounds very Roman, or Latin. That's pretty impressive. So it must be highbrow wrestling. And so I'm curious about that, and so that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to go down there, and I'm going to take the gear and record it, and you should be able to listen to the results here on WVLP the following weekend. Looking out after that, Wednesday, November 21st, ARW Pro is having their annual event called Black and Blue Wednesday. This is the day right before Thanksgiving, before you have to put up with your relatives going and living vicariously through wrestlers beating each other up is a good therapy. So you'll have that opportunity on Wednesday, November 21st at American Legion Post 100 in Lake Station, Indiana. Saturday, November 24th, down in Knox, we'll have Extreme Sports Entertainment and Pro Wrestling King teaming up to put on an event called Hot Enough For Ya. I think the answer will be no. It's not hot enough for me when this event is going on in late November. That will be at 7 o'clock Central. Friday, November 30th, Acme Championship Wrestling will have Lake Village Super Bash at the Lake Village Elementary School in Lake Village, Indiana. That's at 7 o'clock Central. And Saturday, February 2nd again, 2019, will be the next Black Label Pro show. Now, I'm sure you've been taking copious notes as I've been running through all these. And I'm running through them not because you're going to remember every single one, but just to give you a flavor of the sheer number of these things that are available to us in our area. If you've taken copious notes and the dog or the cat eats your sheet of paper, then you can recover the information by heading for metalprofessor.com, tap the NWIWRAP menu item on the left, go look for shows in 2018, and you will see this list of upcoming events, as well as a list of all the other events that I've known about taking place during the entire year. And you can also see a more detailed rundown of the Black Label Pro show that I just talked about, complete with crappy cell phone pictures that I took while I was there. And that's pretty exciting. So that's it for what's going on here in this region. Now, when I started doing the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program, it's been almost 2 years now. Tonight is episode 63. Now, if I have a show every week, and I've been doing this for almost 2 years, if not over 2 years now, once a week for a year and a half, 2 years doesn't add up to 63. And one of the reasons is that I don't do it every single week because some weeks there's just not a significant amount of stuff to talk about. And so I would just, skip that week and catch up the next. But, every once in a while, and I also said at the start that everything I talk about was just going to be about the local wrestling scene. There's enough people yapping about what's going on nationally. I don't need to do that. But there's a trade-off between choosing to not do that and then also this kind of inconsistency in that if I'm concentrating just on the regional wrestling, maybe I don't have enough content for for an appreciable show that lasts longer than 2 minutes every single week. And so maybe once in a while I should bend slightly and do a little talking about the national wrestling scene just to make the shows more consistently available. If I don't have enough local stuff to talk about, maybe I can talk about the national scene. So I'm going to do that here just for a little bit. And not because I'm going to deliver you results from recent television shows or events, at least, in great detail. Really, I just want to give you a picture of what's going on out there in the national wrestling scene, especially for those folks that don't follow it regularly, because this has been a pretty interesting couple of months in the wrestling world, and it's kind of fun to go through an overview. So, as most people who follow wrestling at all know, WWE World Wrestling Entertainment is the premier worldwide wrestling federation. There are lots of runners-up to them, but nobody has been able to dethrone them for decades now. The last group to seriously try was WCW, World Championship Wrestling, and guess what? WWE ended up buying World Championship Wrestling. So they're sort of the Comcast of wrestling, although maybe not as evil. But they have weekly shows, Monday Night Raw, Tuesday Night SmackDown. Those are available on the USA Network. I follow them on Hulu. I get to see a compressed version of Raw on Hulu Tuesday morning. It airs live Monday night, and SmackDown airs live Tuesday night. I get to watch it Wednesday mornings. These are the flagship shows for WWE. They have some peripheral shows that are available on the WWE streaming network. One is called NXT. That's sort of the World Wrestling Farm Club, the minor leagues for the main event, and people that get trained on NXT and you get to know and love there eventually get called up to the main roster and put onto the flagship shows, and very often horribly misused, but that's a whole other story. They just started a show called NXT UK, where they decided they had enough performers centered in the United Kingdom and Europe area that there was enough of a concentration to actually make a show out of it. And so that's another extra wrestling hour every week. This is broadcast from, the wrestling matches are recorded from Cambridge in England. and then they package it together with some announcing and run this show. It's only been on for a couple of weeks, and I don't know what its longevity is, but so far, if you're watching all this live, Raw is 3 hours long, SmackDown is 2 hours long, NXT and NXT UK are each 1 hour long. And then they have a show called 205 Live. This is their cruiserweight show, meaning that this is where the smaller, more daredevil, high flyer wrestlers can show off their goods. This takes place normally on Tuesday evenings on the WWE Network. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 8 hours of new content wrestling every week just from the WWE alone. Now, they've been very busy recently. The TV shows are related and billed to pay-per-view events, although these days that phrase for them isn't really as appropriate because less people are paying a la carte for these things, say through their cable provider. More people are just subscribing to the network where all these events are included, but they're still called pay-per-views. A notable one that they just had was called Evolution because this was the first ever all-women's event. So no dudes other than on the announce crew and referees, things like that. But all the wrestlers were women. So the WWE has been putting them a little bit more front and center. Some would say successfully, some would say not, but they're doing it. And so they really made a statement with this all-women's event. So all the matches had women wrestlers. The main events here were Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch. And for those folks that may have known wrestling back in the day, Charlotte Flair is Ric Flair's daughter. And Becky Lynch is a firecracker of a wrestler. She's Irish, I believe. She's very, very good. And those two had a last woman standing match. A last man standing match is where the people beat each other up with basically no rules, tables, chairs, whatever is, fire extinguishers. Everything is fair game, and your goal is to make your opponent unable to answer a 10 count. And so the women got to do this, and they did a really, really good job with it. The other high-profile match on this show was Ronda Rousey versus Nikki Bella. Now, those of you that are in the sports realm in terms of things you listen to, Ronda Rousey comes from MMA, and she beat up a lot of people there, and now she's in the WWE pretending to beat people up, but she's already extremely good at it. And Nikki Bella is someone who started with WWE as a wrestler, became a reality TV star, and still is a reality TV star, so she's got a little bit of crossover appeal, I guess. But Ronda Rousey is the WWE female champion, women's champion, and she stayed that after facing Nikki Bella. But those were like the high-profile, newsworthy matches that were on that show. But the event itself, Evolution, was newsworthy. Now, just a week or so ago, excuse me while I have a sip of water there, the WWE apparently signed a contract to put on shows in Saudi Arabia. And they had one several months ago, earlier this year, that went off just fine. They were basically used as a propaganda mouthpiece for Saudi Arabia with public service announcements about how progressive Saudi Arabia is becoming in the midst of doing a wrestling show in Saudi Arabia. And they had another one scheduled for this time of year. And I don't remember the exact date. This was a week ago, last Friday. I can't count backwards. I'm very tired. So if I count backwards from November 2nd, perhaps. But anyway, it was last Friday. It went on the air at 4 a.m., 6 a.m. our time because of the time change. But if you're paying attention to world events, you may know that people are frowning at Saudi Arabia right now because of their role in the death of a journalist. And we won't go into the gory details, but Saudi Arabia is currently not quite in favor on the global stage because of some despicable things that they did. And so a lot of other corporations that had events going on in Saudi Arabia pulled out. WWE was kind of on the fence. A lot of people were saying, well, they should cancel the show and not do it. A lot of other people were saying, well, you signed a contract. You can't just not do it now. A lot of planning went into this. they were going to have to pay all of their performers at this point, whether they went or not. And so they decided to go ahead with the event, which it was sort of in a lose-lose situation with this thing. But it was just the geopolitical environment around this event was very interesting. They dialed down the, rah-rah for Saudi Arabia. They stopped saying Saudi Arabia during their promotions for this. They just kept referring to the event as Crown Jewel. They didn't say where it was coming from, so they kind of kept it under the radar. But it was broadcast live around the world. And yeah, it was what it was. It was a big wrestling show with not a whole lot of significant outcomes other than Brock Lesnar is the WWE champion again. Now, besides those big main roster events, WWE recently had a sequence of shows on their network called the Mae Young Classic. This was a tournament of 32 women wrestlers to crown the Mae Young champion. And so this show went on for weeks. It was a compressed show. I think there were 4 to 5 weeks of tournament matches leading up to the main event, which happened at Evolution. But this was really fun because you get to see a lot of people that you're not normally going to see. Independent stars that come together get to be on the show, and then they go back out into their areas, the ones that don't actually get longevity with WWE via a contract. And so it's good publicity for the independents, and it's a lot of fun because it's quite different for WWE fans. And it's over with. A lady named Toni Storm was the winner eventually. And you can check this out on the WWE Network. I definitely recommend watching these. Also currently, they've been very busy, and a lot of these things, the Mae Young Classic is over with, and this one I'm about to mention will be over with soon. The Mixed Match Challenge. This is done through the channel of Facebook Live. I think it was sort of a double experiment. WWE experimenting with could they get traction running events through that channel, and Facebook obviously wanting to do anything they can to get people drawn to Facebook and Facebook Live. This is fun because what it does is it pairs up intergender teams, one man, one woman, in a sort of a tournament style, and it's just fun. The performers go out there and they still stick a little bit with their bad guy, good guy dynamics, but in this case, it's a lot more tongue in cheek. There's a lot of silliness going on, and these folks get to go out there and just let loose a little bit and have a good time and put on wrestling. It's really not wrestling. It's just really the entertainment in the sports entertainment. And so I can recommend that you check out the Mixed Match Challenges. And then coming up in a couple of weeks, you have Survivor Series, which is one of the big four, besides WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, and SummerSlam. Survivor Series is always done around Thanksgiving-ish time. So again, it's coming up in a couple of weeks. One of the big events. And so the big matches announced so far: Brock Lesnar versus AJ Styles, Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch. So if you've ever been considering checking out a big WWE event, maybe watch Raw and SmackDown for a couple of weeks to get invested in the stories, and then check out Survivor Series and see what you think. If you don't like WWE or you want to sample other varieties, you have Lucha Underground. Their fourth season is ending. Raw and the WWE shows they just run in perpetuity. Lucha Underground is a television show. It is a television show that happens to be centered around wrestling, but it's more drama. It's very, very good wrestling, but it's also drama based, and it's got fantasy elements and all sorts of weird things. So they have seasons, and so season 4 is ending, and I definitely recommend it. The first couple of seasons were better than seasons 3 and 4. I think you can still get seasons 1 and 2 on Netflix, but you can catch a lot of episodes on YouTube. But don't tell them I said that. Anyway, this is a lot more of the flippy kind of wrestling, the daredevil wrestling. Very colorful, very character driven, with really unique characters and wrestling styles. And if you are any kind of wrestling fan at all, or even curious, I recommend checking that out. There are some other global or United States organizations like New Japan, Ring of Honor, Evolve. These all have shows that are available on various streaming services or on YouTube and things like that. But we could spend another hour going through those. So what I would rather do is wrap up this edition of the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program, and I will finish out the hour. I'm not going to be able to play the whole thing, but I will give you a flavor of it. Let's go back to music for a couple of minutes. I'll give you a taste of the band Beyond the Black. They have a new disc called Heart of the Hurricane, and you'll hear part of Beneath a Blackened Sky until the top of the hour when I'll fade it into the programming that's supposed to be going on. So thanks for listening. I'm Ken the Metal Professor. Tune in next week for Mostly Metal and the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program.